Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another, I guess we can call it episode of the Vessel mini podcast series. Scaries. Yes. I'm going to stop trying to be professional at this point in the process. I mean, in any point in the process. It is definitely the scaries. I woke up this morning completely panicked that we were recording an episode that I am completely unqualified to record. But here it is because I promised that this series is going to be as real and as raw as Vessel actually is. What this series is about is we are interviewing a couple of different Vessel alumni who can do a much better job than me talking about what Vessel actually is and how these materials and these teachings ripple out into the world. And so today, I have invited on Rachel Mozes, who is a fantastic example of what it means to live this work. In fact, Rachel has been living this work way before she met me, way before she dropped herself into Vessel. And I am so excited to have you come on here today to talk about Module 5, which is all about our higher self and giving ourselves permission to step beyond our story and make the choices about who we want to be in this world. So Rachel, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and the work that you actually do in the world?
Awesome. Okay, I'm ready. I am an occupational therapist by trade. I am an occupational therapist for 15 plus years, and I have mostly worked in skilled nursing facilities. I've worked in pediatrics for a short while. And a couple of years ago, I just started feeling this urge to do something different. And I didn't know what I wanted to do differently, but I knew I wanted to do something. And I had always loved fitness. It was something that was interesting to me. So I went ahead and I became a personal trainer. Fast forward ahead a few years, I really enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the people. It was a tremendous experience for me. And also, I started noticing certain themes working in the nursing homes, working with older people, and working as a personal trainer that people were coming in and they were doing the work, but they were relying on me to do the work for them. They wanted me to figure it out for them. They wanted me to make a plan, and they wanted me to ensure a plan. As enjoyable as it was to schmooze with people and to connect with them, something still didn't feel like it was the right career choice for me. A couple of years ago, I met someone who introduced me to Fally's work, and I joined JTS, which is called IA.
Right.
And I loved it.
Was a former, it's what we used to call what I now call the IA workshops. And just to pause, because not everybody knows what that is. IA is a 3-day intensive designed to take you from one level of living your life through the tunnel completely into the next version of yourself. Right now, IA has been put on hold. It's not gone. It's just deferred for a little while I'm pouring a lot of energy into content creation for my trainings. But IA is coming back. So yeah, keep your eye on that. Yeah, so go back there, Russell. Tell me about IA. Tell me about you at IA.
It was quite an experience. And I joined IA, and it introduced me to a whole new world. I met fantastic people, beautiful community, and I would say the biggest takeaway that I took was this disconnect from my story. I had done many different types of therapies, a lot of different work, and I am so grateful that I did all of them because I believed it allowed me to take the step to go to IA. And there was just something there that stopped me from constantly going back to the story of what happened to me, why I am this way. Are there people to blame? And it just removed me from that equation, took me into looking inward and thinking, okay, what do I want from my life going forward? What would I like if I could write a whole new book and I can start a whole new chapter? What would be the title of my book? What would be the title of my chapter? And where can I go from here? And shortly after that, I think I plunked myself in Vessel, invited or uninvited.
You just kind of was like, I just landed here. I don't know what I'm doing here, but yeah. That's kind of like a Ruffleism.
Yeah, I tend to do that at times. And
wait, just to highlight, because you're so pretty on screen with your beautiful shaitel. I just want people to know what it looks like when Ruffle plunks herself into a place, whether it's the IA vessel, a breathwork training, she comes with a massive weighted blanket. That thing weighs 200 pounds. And she just comes with bags of her blankets, her cozies. She's like, no, when she plunks, she's here to stay. She's here to.
And with a lot of pajamas, a lot of sweatpants and sweatshirts.
Yeah, I kind of laugh at myself that I'm always the most underdressed person in the room because I always come in my gym clothes. Rachel is the one who gives me permission to just show up in sweatpants. I will. I know we're not really. Don't be fooled by how pretty we are on the screen. He doesn't. We will be in gym clothes and sweatpants.
Yes, always and forever.
So you plunge yourself into vessel.
So I plunged myself into vessel, and I slowly got through the modules. Some modules took me a little bit more than others, depending on if my ADD was acting up that day or not. And I mean, we'll highlight it further when we get to talking about the module that I had, but it's significant. It continued to significantly change the way that I look at things. It didn't just come from the viewpoint of therapy. It came from a very holistic viewpoint of who am I as a person? What do I want to become? And what would I like to give to the world, which would then bring me to my next career. But I don't know if we're up to that yet.
We'll go there. I actually want to backtrack and highlight something that you kind of like tangentially mentioned, that you arriving at IA was not your first foray into the world of this work, whatever you want to call this work. I have this aversion to like the healing, right? Healing journey. But this kind of field or experience. So my question to you is, this wasn't your first, and it's not going to be your last, but something you're saying that something shifted for you. What would you say that was?
So prior to arriving in IA, I had worked with the traditional therapy model, CBT, DBT, talk therapy. I had gone to several different programs, all of them non-Jewish. I had no desire to go to a Jewish program. I felt much more comfortable being out of the community, people who didn't know me. And there was a certain safety in that of, I get to go somewhere and I can say my story and also be very respectful within the community. And by chance, I met somebody on a Shavuos program who mentioned to me that actually there's a lot more than just the non-Jewish programs. And maybe it's time to come back into the community and to trust people and to feel comfortable with people. And that to me was a big one. I wasn't sure if I was ready. And then when I committed to doing it, it opened up this whole new world of just being with our people that we were born with, that were raised with, that understand a lot of the things that go on in the community and understand the way we live our lives. And I stepped into a feeling of deep trust and community, which I don't think I was ready to do yet. So I think for me, the game changer was that piece of trust in the community that I hadn't had previously.
Yeah, that's a big one. I identify a lot with that. I've also done a lot of my trainings and a lot of my stuff, in a larger world. And there's also this feeling of I'm not really understood by the community. That I think that's trauma in general. Most of us who experience some form of trauma, we feel that isolation. And so much of the growth has been like, what if I don't have to run? What if the work actually brings me right back to where I started? But there was one more thing that you mentioned about this, the way that you now viewed yourself as more than your story. You weren't just coming as in, this is just another place to tell my story. Something in the last, and I know you now for 3.5 years, right? So even watching, and this is a short time, 3.5 years, but I know that you've been doing this work on yourself for a lot longer. But just the evolution of, it's not about my story anymore. It's about being in this experience and carrying it further, not from a place of I need to heal or there's something wrong with me. You kind of said something really important also. I just want to bring it back, that no matter what field you were in, whether you were in occupational therapy or fitness, right, you were noticing this theme of the reliance on something outside. So bring it back here. Like, how did that kind of solidify into the work that you're doing on yourself and the work that you're now bringing out into the world?
I would say it became less about relying on somebody else or something else to fix me, and more about dropping into myself and thinking, I don't need to fix myself. There's nothing to fix. I just I want to continue giving in this world. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better mother, a better wife, a better practitioner. And what can I do, irrespective of anything else out there? What can I do to help myself and to help others, and let go? What is story? What is story? What happened to me? What made me the way that I am? Because sometimes actually nothing happened, and nothing made you the way that you are. You just are. You just exist. It's whatever it is. You want to call it genetics, you want to call it your experiences, but it's not. It's not. You just exist in this world, and you get to every single day continuously choose to be the person that you want to be.
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with someone that I look up to, right, a mentor of mine, and kind of tracing back, like again, it was a larger conversation, but the aspect of it, like, why am I the way I am, right? And I don't know why it just this very small moment came up that I was like, I don't know, I could just trace it back to this moment, but that moment wasn't that profound. It wasn't that. It was just something in that moment that every time I think about what's happening now, it just keeps coming back to that moment. And it was a very small moment. It was just that something small clicked inside of me that then enabled me to make a large movement. And it's exactly like what I feel like it's what you're saying. There's no major stories. Some of us have had major stories, right? Whether they were major breakthroughs or major traumas, right? We're not
Yes.
discounting that. But for the majority of our lived experience, right? Life is a bunch of very small moments strung together, and we are a product of not one major story that happened to us, but every single day of every single year of our lives, all brought together.
Sure.
And so I'm going to totally go off track and we'll bring it back around. You
Yeah.
mentioned your different careers, right? I know that I've had insecurities about that for myself. Like, I started out here and then I jumped across the map and I did something else. And what I've discovered about myself is that they're all interconnected because there's a common thread. Whether you start as a playgroup teacher and you end up a Rebbitzin teaching Tanakh, whatever it is, or a pharmacist or a dry cleaner, it doesn't matter. The fact that it's the same you looking out of those eyes every morning, there's a common thread, and that common thread is your mission, your purpose, your values. And you have this interesting trajectory, and not just in what you've described in terms of your career, but I know you as a friend. I know you have this just really colorful background, colorful experiences and interests and fascinations. And if you had to look back at your life as a whole and define the common thread that gets you out of bed every morning and that informs your mission, your work, your being in the world, what would you say that is?
Service.
Can you tell us more about that?
I look back throughout my life and my experience, and I can pinpoint people who changed my life. I can definitely pinpoint moments or events that happened, but for the most part, I remember the people that helped me, the people that held me, the people that helped me, the people that gave me information about their own lives that allowed me to then make decisions about my own. And I remember doing a fantastic exercise. There's a place called Onsite in Tennessee, and I went there. They work with psychodrama experiential work. And one of the exercises that they gave was picture an angel in your life and write their name down. And I want you to talk to them as if they were there. And I'll never forget my first therapist. I wrote her name down, and she was my angel. She was that person that no matter what happened, she was there in maternal holding a neutral space, and just whatever came up, she held. And she never looked at me any differently. And that is what I want to help other people with. I want to be there in service. I want to help them. I want who I am as a person to affect other people, even if I don't actually work with them, but even if they interact with me. I would like that they look at me and think, okay, I want to drink some of what she's drinking. I want to have no
I will
alcohol.
drink to that.
I want to have some of what she's having, and that holds me very accountable because I am human and I mess up all the time. All the time.
Yeah, I love this idea of being in service because so many of the people that I meet, and I know that you and I have had this conversation as well, like, how do I define myself? Am I a therapist? Am I a facilitator? Am I an OT, right? Fitness instructor? What are the letters after my name? And what qualifies me or what defines me? And for me, and I know we've spoken about this so many times over the years, what defines me are not the letters after my name. It's the mission. It's that inner thing that gets me out of bed. And that piece is going to come across, or I want it to come across, in everything and anything I do, whether I am teaching, training, being a mommy, serving dinner, or shopping at the grocery store. And service for you is really that thing.
Yeah. And I left one piece out when I was sharing before about how I found out about GTS.
By the way, for JTS stands for Journey
I'm
to
so
Self. No,
yes.
because we
I
went straight into like they called IA, and the
yes.
name that I ended up choosing and sticking with was IA, which means the search. It's for the seeker.
Yes.
But once upon a time, it was called Journey to Self. Yes.
Yes. And I left out the piece that the reason why I was on that Shavuos program where I met the person that had introduced me to IA was because my father had died a few months before. And my daughter was born, and 8 days later, my father died. It was very quick. It was very sudden. It was the course of a couple of weeks. And I think that was a defining moment in my life where I realized, okay, I have this opportunity now to look at life, birth, and death at the same time. 8 days is a very 8 days after giving birth is a very intense coinciding of life and death and breaking apart and creating a new self. And I remember thinking, okay, what do I want my life to be? What do I want people to say at my funeral? What happens when everything falls apart and nothing that I thought was real is real anymore? And that I think set me up so that when I was on that Shavuos program, which is one of the first times that I went away because I wasn't necessarily going to my parents, it set me up to, okay, what would I like to make of my life right now? And my answer really was service. I want to make something special out of my life, and I want to help other people make something special out of their lives.
It's so funny. You're talking about having lost your father, and that very shortly after you ended up at the workshop. And I just have this funny memory popping into my mind that very shortly after the workshop, I think within the week of the workshop, we had this WhatsApp chat where everybody was keeping up with one another. And you said something about your father. And right after, I just posted a silly song. Do you remember? I posted Manamana.
Yes, the Muppets song.
The Muppet song, Manamana. And you went crazy because that was your father's song.
Yes, he used to get a real kick out of it. Me and my sisters would sing it and put our hair in high buns and dance around, and they'll kill me if they ever watch this. But yeah, there were some core memories over there. Sorry, sisters.
Yeah, there was something about, and I'm bringing it up even though it doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but there was just something about that feeling of, I don't know what made me put that song. I didn't know anything about your history with that song, and while you're sharing about how your father passed, and it was that opportunity for you to like review your life, and just kind of thinking like, oh, that was kind of meaningful then, that song showed up right there when you were doing particularly that kind of piece of work.
Sure. Oh yeah, that was a God wink.
And there have been quite a few of those God winks in the duration of our friendship.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I want to highlight, before we go into the work that you actually do, which is so cool, so fascinating, and I can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to hear you talk about it. But I want to talk about also the module, because it's going to lead right into the work that you do. The module that you chose to come on for this series is Module 5, which is all about the higher self. And this is the module that really confuses people when I start teaching it, because they think that when I talk about the higher self, I'm talking about something soulful, something spiritual, like maybe your neshama. And that's not actually what we mean when we talk about the higher self. And when I was thinking about this interview series, I was thinking, who could actually even really give words in a very grounded, practical way, in a way that they live this experience all day, every day. And then you volunteered. You were like, that's my module. And I'm like, all right, take it away, Rosal. What is the higher self? How do you define that? What's your experience of the higher self?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I volunteered. I think I basically said, I'm taking that module and thanks very much.
Right. Okay. So for people who don't yet know Rachel, she plops herself down with her big blankets and she just makes statements, and they just are true. You do not argue with what Rachel says. I said this on other episodes that I've recorded. The craziest, most amazing thing happened with these 8 episodes is that I reached out to a bunch of different people and there was no overlap. Everybody like immediately knew which episode they wanted to do, which module. And there was no like, oh, sorry, someone else took it. It was like, zoop. So you're not the only one who is like, that's my module. So take it away, Rachel. Tell us about the higher self and why it's your module.
Do you want to give a little background on what the higher self is?
Yes, sure. So to me, and feel free, the higher self module is an hour and a half long. It's not something that I can, just encapsulate, but if I could in one sentence, it's very often we operate from all these inner voices in our head, right? We're very familiar with some of those voices, the names for them: inner critic, inner child. There's an endless list of inners. I mean, last week, Rachel helped me coin, your inner dragon. It's totally a thing. So, all the list of inners, but essentially, every inner voice is narrating to someone. Someone in you is actually listening to that inner voice. Someone in you is choosing this course of action versus that course of action. That one is the higher self. That one may not have a voice. The voice narrates and reports to the one listening. The one listening, the one seeing through the eyes, the one's choosing who we want to be in the world. That is my very, very limited definition, because again, we can't encapsulate the whole module in one sentence. But if I could, this would be the start of it.
So I would say for me is that a lot of the work that I had done in therapy, and I would say I started doing therapeutic work about 15 and a half years ago. I was pregnant with my first child. I was pregnant with my first child then, and I started the work. And like I shared before, I did CBT, DBT. I'm a huge fan of psychodrama experiential work. Don't ask me to explain it because I will butcher it and give it my completely own spin on it. Google and ChatGPT will be your best friends.
Look
In
at
this
you
case,
using ChatGPT like a pro.
yes. A boss taught me how to use it like a semi-pro, and I found I think traditional therapy is incredible. I think everyone should go into doing traditional therapy. It's a way of building a vessel, a way of building scaffolding, so that you can have this vessel, right, and you can fill it up and fill it up and fill it up and gain a ton of techniques, and then you can move on and you can do work that is a little bit more esoteric or a little. It's not to say traditional therapy is not scary, but you can start coloring out the lines a little bit. And the reason why I'm giving
Once
all
your
this
vessel
background
is full, it can begin to overflow.
it can overflow. It can get a little messy. Keep the towels nearby. And I found that a lot of the work that I was doing was operating out of a place of dealing with my triggers. Okay, and triggers is it's a word that's used all the time, and sometimes it's abused. But I found that I was doing a lot of symptom relief. A lot of I get mad when somebody looks at me. Oh, I'll give a great one. I get really mad when people leave their shopping carts places. Okay, I just think it's rude. It's rude, and it really bothers me, and I think it always will. No matter how much work I do, I'm working on not giving dirty looks. I'm working on not taking the shopping cart and smashing it into your car. And what I realized is that there were so many triggers. There were so many things that deeply bothered me, and I spent a lot of time in story. What is it about people leaving their shopping carts? What is it about shopping carts in general? What is it about rudeness? Why can't I just transcend that? Why can't I just say, okay, this person left a shopping cart, whatever. And I spent a lot of time, especially in psychodrama, working through the triggers and working through the different pieces and letting out my anger and doing fear releases and going to the story of why am I so angry? Or why am I so afraid? Or why do I react the way that I react? And then at a certain point, it was like, okay, enough, Adkan. I've done a lot of this work and now I want to transcend. I want to step into a part, I think in DBT, they call it like the wise mind. Which is similar to the self, where I want to take all my parts that react a certain way, all my parts that I don't necessarily want to look at, the inner child. I love to throw that inner child out of the room. Big fan of that. And I just want to take all these parts that are coming up for me and I want to observe them. I want to get to a part where they're all circling here and I'm up here, not up here judging them, but up here looking at them with curiosity of like, interesting. People dumping their shopping carts is really annoying. What does that mean for you? Like a very curious part of myself, as opposed to this judgmental, aggressive part of myself. And when I was constantly working with triggers, I was constantly staying in that very judgmental part. So getting to IA, getting to vessel, and just starting to really understand that actually I can remove myself from the equation. There is a part of my mind that can come online, and I can just watch everything going on around me, and I can drop in. And when I drop in, and when I'm calm, and when I'm present, and I'm in a parasympathetic state, and everything around me is good, it doesn't matter if my daughter's throwing a tantrum. I mean, it does matter because it's annoying as heck, but it doesn't really ultimately matter if she's throwing a tantrum. It doesn't matter if my oldest is yelling how we didn't take him to the 500 places that he wants to go to. And it doesn't matter that there's construction outside. Like I can go to myself. I can drop in and I can just be there. And when we're here and when we're present in our bodies and when we're really dropping into trust and presence, everything else flows. Everything. And that is a skill that really, I only got to somewhat getting there after years of really just sitting in the therapist chair and working through those triggers and working through that story, and then stepping over the threshold of like, okay, what's the next step? How can I go further? How can I be of service to myself and to everybody else?
I want to highlight 3 different things that I heard from you as you describe the higher self. Number 1, that self is curious. Number 2, that self is presence. And number 3, you cannot spiritually bypass yourself into that state. It took a lot of years of the actual trigger work, right?
Yes.
The actual spinning, creating the stories, creating new stories, to finally begin relaxing into this space. And that doesn't mean that you have it perfect. It doesn't mean that you don't yell at your kids sometimes. I also want to say that back on what I said before about being in the higher self doesn't mean that you have it perfect. Some of you are on my email list, and I don't know if you're reading my emails. I usually send an email like once a week. And the email that has garnered the most feedback this summer was the belly button day email. So this is Russell of Belly Button Hour fame. Russell was the angel in my world, in my life, that coined the term belly button hour. So being a paragon, a great example of what it means to drop into your higher self, Russell is also the great example of what it means to live true belly button days. Can you tell us what a belly button hour or a belly button day is?
Oh God, I really hate belly button days, especially since I had 3 kids, and there are days I really can't find my belly button. So it gets even more painful. Here I coined the phrase and I can't actually find my own. But to me, the belly button hour or the belly button days is just, wow, that's such a great word. It's just those days that feel like nothing will ever be okay again. Like there's a part of myself that knows that it will be. Otherwise, I wouldn't call it like such a silly name like belly button day. I would call it like that no good, miserable, horrible day, like that book that we grew up with. And it's a yearning. It's this piece of nothing's going to go right. I don't know if it'll ever go right. Is there anything that I can do to change it? Is there anything that God can do to help me with this? Do I have enough friends? Do I have people in my life that's going to help me? It's like that Matzah Shabbos rule that another friend of ours coins, where Matzah Shabbos and after 9 p.m., you do not contemplate your life ever. And when the kids are off, and Erev Yantif.
Right. Sunday, Matzah Shabbos, when the kids are off, Erev Yantif, Chilamite, after 9 p.m.,
Yeah.
and before coffee. You do not have existential crises. You don't.
Correct.
You don't. You put it on hold for after the coffee, for Monday morning, for before 9 p.m. Absolutely. Yes.
Correct. And belly button days and belly button hours happen to all of us. Life is hard. It is beautiful and it is hard at the same time. It's the polarity, and it's part of the human experience. It's never going to be easy all the time. It's just not. And it's a hard truth to stomach, that even with doing so much work and even with incredible experiences and incredible people around us and the world of therapy and nature and big yetis that hold a lot of coffee, life is still going to be really, really hard at times. And Can we work with that? Can we sit with that? Can we work through it? And when you have a belly button day, you do need to call a friend.
Yeah,
You do.
I also want to clarify for people who are like, what is she talking about? Belly button day, the term is coined from that weird feeling that you will actually get if you stick your finger into your actual belly button. Scientifically, it's because once upon a time, that was your link to home, your first home on this planet, inside mother, whatever your experience is with mother, with being held, it doesn't matter. It was our first link to something greater. And when we were disconnected, there are still nerve endings, right? Former nerve endings, whatever it is, that sealed up to become your belly button. Is what you say. Just to be able to stomach that, that was punny. Um, but yeah, so that is that feeling. Most people, if you talk to them about sticking their finger into their belly button, they're like, there's like this existential homesickness, the longing of will everything, anything ever be okay again? And I think that what you ended with, that when you're in a belly button place, you really need to call a friend. I think that's really important because the whole aspect of the belly button feeling is that once we felt connected, once we were connected to mother, to source, and the initial trauma, whether you have big T trauma in your life, there is the initial trauma that we all experienced upon coming into this world, that first moment of disconnect. And of course, there's attachment and there's bonding, and hopefully you were put on your mother's chest and you had skin to skin contact. But we all have that existential something that feels, wait, something is missing. There's a longing for more. So with that, Rachel, could you tell us, because you are such a good epitome of somebody who always longs for more. You are, on one hand, such a satisfied person. Like, you are so present in the things that you're doing, the things that you're passionate about. I know you joke about your ADD, but really, you are a magnificent level. You have a magnificent level of presence wherever you're at. And yet you hold the presence and the longing so well. You're happy where you're at, and also there's more. You know that there's more, and you're not afraid to ask those questions. So I've watched you immerse yourself more and more into this work, and making this transition from I'm in pain, get me out of pain, to I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm feeling, I am bringing forth, I am in service to myself, and then it ripples out to others. And you have made a conscious choice about 2 years ago now, yeah. You joined my breathwork training, and it evolved into something so much more. Please share with us what you bring to the world.
This is a fun one. I love this. So I actually took notes prior to this so that I could get all the words in that I want to get in, and somehow it's a little hard to read notes while we're doing that.
You can lift it up to the screen. We started. My first sentence here was already a botch up, and I refused to re-record. We are as real as possible, and to be fair, most of the people that I'm interviewing in this series have never been interviewed before. Their first time on screen. It's their first time going public, and so of course there's a little bit of awkwardness of like, how do I actually express everything I want to express? So if you read from your notes, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much similar to what you said when you're talking about the higher self module. Like there's so much information and there's so much to talk about, and I don't want to do it a disservice, but I'm going to give a small synopsis. So a little while ago, Fally and I have been friends for about 3.5 years, and Fally was doing a breathwork training, which at the time I didn't think I could join. Time constraints, and there were a couple of other things that I was doing.
Not my thing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. We're actually saying what I really said to her. Not my thing. I participated in breath work. I loved breath work. Gave me absolute terror to the thought of facilitating others. I have a very hard time working one-on-one in breath work and receiving. I enjoy group very much. So the thought of going and being trained in one-on-one facilitation was very daunting to me, combined with other things going on with my life. And the first day of training, I just went to say hi, and I stayed.
She never left.
I never left.
She came in all pretty in her sheetal and her like whole get up, and she says, "Excuse me." She left the room, came back in her sweatpants with her fuzzy blankets. She did the plop, and she never left.
And I never left. And I always keep a blanket and sweatpants in my car. So just a heads up. You never know when you might join a train.
It was. I'll be back in 20.
So I just showed up in that space, which is also very unlike me. I do find that a little bit disrespectful. I like to be organized and I like to be planned out. And I just plopped myself down and I showed up in that space.
You were called.
And exactly. And I was cold and I loved it. I loved it. There was something about being in a room with whatever it was, 20 something other people who just wanted to improve and just wanted to do the work. And it was gorgeous to me. So I did the training and I kept telling Fally, I'm not going to be facilitating people. Thanks very much. This is for my self work. I'm not working with anybody. I'm going to continue along with some other things.
Hold my beer.
Hold your- and uh, and I'm going to share another piece, which is a loaded topic and is I'm going to be careful in what I say here, but for several years also, I had experienced psychedelics. And for those who don't know, psychedelics are mind altering drugs that are put, and there's many different kinds that are put into the system, and they can open the mind up to a lot of different opportunities and ways of changing. My first experience was incredibly unsafe. I went to a practitioner that just dumped a whole bunch of people in the room, wanted to make a lot of money, did not hold the space. It was not contained. Somebody brought their baby. The baby was sleeping there overnight. It was absolutely traumatic for me. And I was horrified. And at the same time, it shifted something tremendously in my life. There were specific things that I had been grappling with for years. And it took those things, and I sat in pain. I sat in pain for 12 hours, and I really suffered. And then I made a conscious choice that I don't want to suffer anymore, and I want to change this. And it solidified that information for me, and it created lasting change for me. Me, myself, and the psychedelic created lasting change. And when I went to, and I had several other experiences after that, I got smarter and I did a lot more research. I met a lot of safe people. And actually, on Fally's training, I met my mentor who was coming to take Fally's training. She had years and years of experience with her own work. She was a therapist in her own right, and she was taking Fally's training. I won't say her name just because of the anonymity of her taking the training. It's not my information to share. That might change over time. And I met her, and she started training me in psychedelics in a very safe and measured and careful way. Specifically, we work with several psychedelics, but specifically with LSD. And that in conjunction with breath work, I actually think that breath work is a prerequisite for psychedelics, and I can explain why soon. But that in conjunction with breath work is incredibly, incredibly powerful work. And my main disclaimer is that it must be done with safety, with trust, with presence, and with scaffolding, meaning therapy must be done before. Self-work must be done before. Going into this type of work without having a therapist or somebody who's very skilled to hold you can be really frightening and can be really unsafe. So I'll leave it to you, Fally, to ask any good follow-up questions, because I do sometimes have a hard time getting my thoughts to go where they want to go or where I want them to go.
You explained it so well. And what I will add to this is that I have a reputation out there that I'm very anti-psychedelics. And it's funny to me because I have done many podcast interviews, right, where people have asked me my opinions. I've been very clear about them. And yet people seem to think that I'm against it. And I've never said I'm against it. I'm against the way it's being done. I'm against the way people think that psychedelics are a magic pill. And what's happening is people are basically taking them the way they took them in the 60s. You do not dump a bunch of people in the room without the proper preparation. You don't dismiss them from the room without the proper integration. You don't keep them in the room without the proper facilitation. And who the facilitator is matters, right? I remember, I've said this before, that I was once years ago working with a therapist. And, she and I just didn't get along. But at the time I was very young and I was very naive. I really looked at the therapist like they know what they're talking about and I'm the broken one, right? So I have to listen to whatever the therapist says. And I remember this one moment of clarity where the therapist was trying to tell me something about my life or what I should do. And I remember thinking, I don't like you. I don't trust you. The way you live your life is not in alignment with my values. Like I was from, and she wasn't, she was a little bit like, she was a little bit of a self-hating Jew. Like she was too educated to be properly Jewish. She was not religious, but She was Jewish. And I remember thinking, how can you really get, and I work with many non-Jewish practitioners, but this particular thing that I was struggling with, bringing it back to being in the community, I was struggling with my place in the community. And she was trying to give me advice. And I was like, you're not the right person. You and I don't align in our values. You and I don't align in our perspectives. You're not a bad person, but you're probably not the best person to be facilitating me at this time. And so if I was going to have anyone come here and speak about psychedelics, it was only going to be someone that completely aligned with my vision and my values around how psychedelics should be administered, what role they actually play in the work that we do. And I think you outlined it so beautifully. This was a natural transition for you based off 15 years of work, right? And years of life experience before that. 15 years of consciously sitting yourself down in a therapist's chair, in workshops, in retreats, in whatever it was, doing the work, showing up to mother and to birth a baby 8 days after your father passed away, and not copping out, being willing to just really go there and plopping yourself in. I see a lot of people today who facilitate psychedelics are like, this is what I do now. And I think we also didn't really broach the subject of what you did do until about 30 minutes into this recording, which I think was very valuable, because I think the people listening had 30 minutes to see who you are, how you think, how you articulate, the presence that you hold in your body. And to me, that's very important. The way you say that you don't just take on someone for breathwork, for psychedelics. There's breathwork first. They have to have the proper scaffolding in place. They need to be seeing a therapist. They need to transition out of the psychedelic experience, work with someone going forward, whether it be you or not. I love what you also shared about the fact that you have a mentor. There is someone, before we talk about what LSD is, because I know that's really your medicine of choice. I know you work with others. I want to hear specifically more about LSD because I know that it really relates to this higher self situation. But before we go there, talk to me about having a mentor.
Okay, sure. So one of the main things before I had gone on Fally's training was that I wanted to learn from somebody, but it was very important to me, similar to what Fally said before, was this piece of I need to know that this mentor is living the work. I don't need to know that they're perfect. I don't need to know that they sit in a mountain somewhere in Tibet and they can sit and meditate. That's not my goal. I need to meet somebody who continuously works on themselves and is in a similar life situation as me. I have had many different experiences with mentors over the years, but I do want to work with somebody who's within the community and understand this community. And I have two mentors. One actually is not in our community at all, is not Jewish. And she is a wonderful, wonderful resource. And I wanted to meet somebody that was really in it and understood what it was like to live a from lifestyle with all the beauty and all the challenges that come with it. And a mentor is somebody that I can continuously go back to and say, okay, a client called me. This is their story. How does that story show up in my life? Where am I in that story? Sometimes clients call me and they have something very, very similar, a similar challenge in a marriage or a similar challenge with a child or a similar trigger to me. And I'm like, okay, what's going to be my work in it? How can I change as a person in order to help this person come through? And I had a phone call a couple of months back where somebody called me and they said, all I want to do is work on spirituality. I want to work on my connection to God. And I called my mentor and she goes, when was the last time you spoke to God? I'm like, do you really have to ask me that? Really? And that was important for me. That was important for me to learn that actually I don't get to get by scot-free. I need to continue every time a client comes to me with something that they're struggling with. I need to look inward and I need to see, is this something I struggle with? And if I do, I need to work on it. If it's something that I don't struggle with, how would I handle the situation? What would I do? And that's what my mentor does for me. She's a mirror. When I speak to her, she reflects back what I need to work on, what the client might need. And at the end of the day, there are always going to be people who have done this work for longer than us, always. And we do need to tap into that. We need to tap into learning from people who have more experience than us and more knowledge than us. And then, God willing, we get to pay it forward to people who are going to continue to learn from us. But we need both. We cannot go and do this work alone. We need community, we need knowledge, and we need other people who can hold us through this process, because that's what will keep our clients the safest. And any therapist who's worth their salt, any facilitator who's worth their salt, has a mentor or is in supervision. And if you call somebody and they say, I need to speak to a supervisor, I need to speak to a mentor, that is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. It means that they value you, they value your time, and they want to give you the best offering that they can. So I am a huge fan of it, and I will continue to have a mentor as long as I do this.
Yeah, I think that there is almost this unconscious shame around like, oh, what does it say about me if I have a mentor? Like, am I a toddler? Do I need to hold my hand? And you describe mentorship so beautifully. It's not who do I call when something goes wrong? That's not what a mentor is. It's not, your mentor is not your training wheels. Your mentor is someone who's making sure that you're doing the work while you're helping someone else do the work. It's not, hey, it's a, sometimes we call a mentor and we say, hey, I got myself stuck. I need a little actual practical help. But most of the time, it's that level of accountability. It's who's keeping you growing, who's keeping you on a growth mindset, who's being your mirror, and who's keeping you accountable to this work. And I mean, Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah says it, right? Knei lecha chaver, aseh lecha rav. Surround yourself with those people. And I really love the idea that it's a knei lecha chaver. Buy for yourself a friend. Be willing to invest. Whatever it costs. Don't just fall into like, these are my friends because these are who I share a neighborhood with, right? It's like, no, bribe your friends to be friends with you, whatever it takes, Russell. Dude, yeah. And you kind of did that to me. You were like, Fally, I am going to be your friend, whether you like it or not.
Well, I'm going to rewrite that. Actually, I offered my friendship to you.
You did.
I gave you that gift.
That gave me that gift.
And once you took it, yes, then I shoved myself on you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and even when I kind of disappear for a little bit because I'm a turtle, I crawl into my cave, Ruffalo's like, I'm coming to find you, and I will pull you out by your fuzzy blanket or hoodie or whatever it is. That is true. That everybody needs it. And I want to talk more now about specifically LSD because I think the way you define mentorship is someone who will come and find you, someone who is going to rescue you from the own dark recesses of your blind spots, of the stories you tell yourself, the caves you sometimes hide in. And as a facilitator, you do the same for your clients. So can you tell us, I know that when you described your first medicine experience, it was not LSD. We don't have to go into the details of the different psychedelic experiences that you've had. And somehow you landed on LSD as your medicine of choice, as a thing that you really love to facilitate. And LSD has a very, very specific frequency, a specific journey that the client gets to go on. And I know that it ties in very strongly to the aspect of the higher self in this module. So take it away, Rachel. What can you tell us about those experiences? Sure.
So I'm going to get a little nerdy and sciencey for a little bit because I do think that it's important not just to give my opinion on it, but to actually give some of the studies and some of the research. And there's a lot online, and there's some really great books, even like Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. James Fadiman has some really excellent books. One of the books that I really enjoyed recently was the Ethics of Something. I'm going to get the exact. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It goes through a lot of that. Thank you for remembering when I send you book links.
I'm a book nerd. I read titles.
I read the books. I don't always remember the titles. And one of the main reasons why I like LSD, and LSD is a synthetic substance, but it does come actually from ergot, which is some sort of yeast, but it was synthesized in a lab, I believe by Albert Hofmann, but I could be getting that wrong. And it was synthesized in the 60s or the 70s and possibly even earlier. He actually, as he synthesized it, he tested it. So he was in his lab and tripping. But what better way to do it than to actually experience what you're going to be offering to others? And some of the benefits of LSD, and it does have a bad reputation, which is it does induce a lot of fear in people. And I think that was just part of the government trying to shut down a lot of what was going on because people were actually taking psychedelics and then choosing not to go to war. It was around the same time as the Vietnam War. And Tim Leary is famous for saying something like tune in and drop out. I'll forget the exact term. And people they were tuning into themselves, and they were committing to love and to trust, and they didn't really want to go to war, and they didn't want to fight. And LSD is very beneficial because it does have a very long staying time. It binds to the brain and it can last 8 to 14 hours. Typically, a journey with LSD can take a solid 8 to 12 hours, and it stays really active and long in the brain. It's longer than some other psychedelics, which I won't get into. I'll just give some examples, such as DMT, psilocybin. All of that can be Googled, and you'll get some great information. And it gives the brain a lot of time in a neuroplastic, suggestible, and malleable state, meaning the brain becomes like putty. The brain is open, critical learning periods open, right? The way it works is when we're younger, that there are certain times that we can learn things very quickly. If you watch a baby, right, they'll pick up a block and they're going to look at the block and they're going to feel the block and they're going to lick the block and they're going to throw the block. And that is how they learn. And they learn very, very, very fast. Usually around, I believe, ages 21 to 23 is when those critical, and there's different critical windows for different ages, 7, 9, 12 for different skills. And those windows tend to close. And many times as adults, we become rigid and we become very tight in our thinking. So LSD can actually open up the brain, open up critical learning windows, and we can create new neural pathways. We can create new ways of learning things, new ways of being in the world. And we can work through a lot of traumas and a lot of experiences that would be more difficult to work through or take longer in therapy. Now, again, you need the scaffolding. You need to have the tools and the ability to be able to hold yourself with whatever comes up. And the job of the facilitator is to hold you through it with unconditional positive regard. They hold you and they look at you as if you are that baby with all that love. And when you are held in such a beautiful way and with so much space and presence, you are allowed to get messy. You are allowed to crack open. And whatever needs to come up will come up in the process. So the reason why I like LSD is really those two reasons. Other psychedelics also have that neuroplasticity, but LSD is very long. So you have more time in the malleable state to cover a lot of ground. So that is the reason why I like it specifically. That being said, Fally, unless you have specific questions, I would just explain quickly like what the nervous system states are and how the process would work.
I just want to highlight something that there was the drug usage of, the hippie revolution. And like you're saying, tuning in, dropping out, we're not going to war, peace, love, right? And there's something to that. I think that when we drop in deep enough, whether you're doing it with psychedelics, whether you're doing it with breathwork or, his Bodhidus, we do come to love because that is who we are. I believe internally. If you dig deep enough, you will find that wellspring of love. That's why Vessel Module 1 is called self-love and Module 8 is called love itself. It starts and ends with love. So it's just a continuous thread. But what makes what you're describing very different than I think what a lot of people assume psychedelics are is that you're not tripping. I actually hate the word, we're tripping. We're not tripping. We are actually doing some form of brain surgery. There is neuroscience here, and it's incredibly important to be intentional here, especially as a facilitator, and to have the proper training, because it's not just a matter of giving someone some substance and just letting them trip. The amount of knowledge that one must have about the brain, the body, and developmental neurological states, the reprogramming required, what it means when the brain is so malleable, what it means for a facilitator to actually step into that space to help literally at some points reparent someone. I mean, there have been the stories from the trenches, right, where the facilitator will literally be on the floor holding the client physically, body to body, taking the client sometimes into the shower, and just showering them off because they are a child in that state. And if we're scaring people away because it sounds so horrific, good. Yeah. Yes, psychedelics are not for everybody. They are for the people that are really ready to go that deep, that vulnerable, to be reparented, reprocessed to that level, to that degree. And the facilitator has to be someone who is not only capable of going as far as it needs to go, but capable of holding that absolute boundary, because there's a lot of transference or projection that can happen there. If you're going back to a baby state and that facilitator basically reparents, it is so easy to come out of that and have this attachment to the facilitator. You're my new mommy now. And the facilitator has to be such an expert at reparenting, but not really being part of that equation, to be the invisible. And the gift of a true facilitator is actually being invisible. making an impact, an invisible impact. And you started this conversation about your angels, right? Your angels are the people who made the greatest impact, and they made it by helping you believe in yourself so that you weren't dependent on them. You weren't reliant on them. And the reason we're just dumping this information here is because psychedelics is a hot topic, and you go as nerdy as you want to go, because I think people need to know even what to Google or what to ask before they ever consider popping a pill and signing up for a session. And also, let's just put this out there. Real psychedelic sessions are very expensive. And now you know why. Because a one-on-one facilitation with LSD is a 12 to 14 hour commitment. And it's not just a commitment in terms of time. It's a commitment in terms of space. It has to be done in the right space with the right intention, the right pre-session, the right integration. And if that is not worth everything to you, right? If you're going cheap on an experience like that, then you're not just doing yourself a disservice, you're doing something dangerous. The good facilitators, this is why they charge a lot. Not because psychedelics are so cool and we get to charge what we charge, but because this is what they're really giving you. Now get nerdy with me, Rachel. What is the science?
Okay. I'm going to get nerdy in a second, but I just wanted to add on to what you said about the pricing. That I remember the first time I paid a significant amount of money for a therapy program. And I remember the first time I paid a significant amount of money for a psychedelic experience, and it was hard. It was hard, and I really had to sit with it. And I would say in general, I am a very generous person, and I do look at money. And even when I had many money struggles over the years, I look at it as an energy and as a channel for something great. And when we commit to spending a certain amount of money, it is a commitment to ourselves. Also, it means that I deeply believe in this work, and I believe in the person that I'm going to work with. And that is why also I do require breathwork sessions before, or some sort of relationship building, because it is very important to have trust in the facilitator. And also, it's important to know that as a client, I know and I believe that this process is going to be worth the money. And I don't want anyone to come to me and spend a lot of money and then say, I didn't trust you, or I didn't feel good around you. Why did I spend that? I want to give them the opportunity, get to know me, get to know the experience. And it applies for any psychedelic practitioner or anyone in breathwork. Get to know me. Let's see what happens. And then you decide if you want to take that step in regards to responsibility and cost. And it requires a tremendous amount of holding. And any client that I take through, it's not a pump and dump, a nursing term, but it's not a pump and dump. It's actually, you are going to come into a process, you are going to be held, and then you are gently going to be brought back into the world. And you are not going to be dumped, and you are not going to get hurt, and you're not going to get enmeshed. And I will not be your new mommy, and you're going to be fine. You're going to be your own mommy. But you get to have that experience of being held in the way that every single one of us deserves. And this is not to throw shade on our mothers. I believe that there's room to work through if there's any animosity or pain towards a parental figure. So what Fally was talking about before, there is a soul rupture. We come from being one with God to being shoved into a body. We come out of our mother's bodies and into this world, and it's loud and it's bright and it's noisy, and that in itself
And
is
of
a trauma.
itself.
Yeah, is a trauma, and there's no blame here. It just is. And what can we do to move forward and to continue on? And then I'm going to nerd out.
Yeah. I also want to be conscious of time, so I'll tell you where
Yes.
I want to go with the time we have together. I want to hear you nerding out, and also as you nerd out specifically around what LSD does, I know that it very much helps the client engage with that higher self perspective, the one that's above the story. So as you give us the science, tell us why and how this really shows up in those sessions.
Okay. So I'm going to nerd out fast and talk fast. I'm sorry. I apologize. Don't put me on 2 times speed. So the way it works in general with psychedelics, breath work, things like that, is we have 2 nervous system states, which affect everything in the body. They control all the body's communication, all the processes in the body, and they take in and respond to any information that's out there in the world. It's all encompassing, these nervous system states. So there's the sympathetic state and the parasympathetic state. Our sympathetic state is our fight or flight state. It's a way to resolve danger. A bear is chasing after us. This is the mechanism that we go into. This is the survival mechanism that God gave us so that we can stay safe and in control. So if we see a bear coming at us, right away we run. If we see somebody running towards us with a hatchet, right away we run. And this state is, it's a very tight state. It's survival based. It's what can I do quickly to get myself out of this situation? So we become very closed hearted, very rigid, very afraid of triggers, physically tight in our muscles, in our pelvic floor, in our diaphragms. This is emergency mode. Most of us spend our lives, whether or not we had big T's or little t's, most of us spend our lives in this sympathetic state.
I have a big T, just saying.
You have a big T. And most of us spend our lives in this type of state where we're constantly looking and we're judging and we're thinking, and what can I do next? And what can I do to prevent myself from feeling pain? What can I do to prevent my children from feeling pain? My spouse? How can I stay tight and small and triggered? And then we have our parasympathetic state, which is our rest and digest mode, our rest and restore. That is when the danger has passed and we come back into ourselves, because when the danger is happening, our body actually starts diverting blood from our extremities, and it actually slows down our digestion in order for us to be able to do whatever we need to do to keep ourselves safe. So when the danger passes and when that slows down, we go into a parasympathetic state where the prefrontal cortex is online. We're comfortable in our own skins. Our body's doing what it needs to be doing. It's digesting. We're cool. We're calm. We're very curious. We're not feeling threatened by anything outside of ourselves. You can have an opinion. I can have an opinion. It doesn't matter. It's just a state of curiosity. We can think logically. We can interpret information very clearly.
I love reading your notes.
Yeah,
You
I'm
do
actually
an
going.
amazing job reading through those notes. You're very present.
Yes, I should know this by heart by now, but I also know that tight for time.
Yeah.
So, this is the feeling of the heart being open, where we're able to feel fear without fear, shame without shame. It's a noticing of, oh, I'm afraid. This is what fear feels like in my body without attaching story, without a narrative. We go into narratives as a way of protecting ourselves when we're in a sympathetic state,
So
when
it's
we
like
are
fear without being afraid.
correct. Fear without
Love
being
it.
afraid, shame without being ashamed.
Love it.
Okay. I think they say in Tanya, it's like joy on one side of the heart and tears on the other.
Yeah.
So that would be like the opposite. And it's a perspective of, oh, this is interesting. Like I'm
Wait,
afraid.
I gotta stop you right there. So that
Yeah.
little casual line that you dropped about learning Tanya, this is another theme that keeps showing up on all of the episodes that I'm recording. This almost like unconscious, unintentional drifting towards spirituality and Torah. And I'm just highlighting it because it keeps showing up as a theme. Like I know for me it was something that happened as well. Not this like, I am choosing this right now, but almost as if like the more parasympathetic we became, the more heart open we became, some of that started just feeling more aligned for us. So
Yeah.
yeah, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to highlight it.
Oh, I love them.
Go forth. Go forth.
So emotionally we can feel the tension of opposites of I'm in so much pain right now, but I can also experience joy at the same time. Or I really don't like this person, but they actually have some great qualities. So we're able to start holding things on both sides. Like it can be this way and it can be this way. And when we can actually hold the tension of opposites, that's when we're really able to move forward in life, because we understand that people are just a combination of many different things and we go out of judgment. So what happens in a journey, especially on LSD, is that when the medicine goes in, and every journey is different, and sometimes it can take several journeys in different layers, because sometimes just trust has to be established in the beginning. And what happens in this state is that the medicine goes in and people can go into a sympathetic state of just absolute pure terror. And we start to see in 3D what is going on for them. What are their defense mechanisms? And one of the most common ones is that need to know of like, what's happening to me? What did you give me? Why did I do this? What do I do? What do I do? And people can go into loops where they start looping into very specific defense mechanisms, and the same things come up over and over and over again. And that, by the way, can sometimes happen for 12 hours, the same 3 loops. And the main goal really is to get the client, or to allow the client to drop into the parasympathetic state, that eventually they go to a place of, I don't know what is happening here, but can I be okay with that? Can I breathe and be here? Hence breath work. Can I breathe and be here? Can I just sit with whatever's coming up for me, not attach story, and drop in? And then people start to drop in. And what happens when they drop in? They don't drop right into trust. They start trusting. And then they actually get slapped across the face. Because what happens is when you start trusting and when you go into a parasympathetic state, the body starts clearing up cellular memory. And there's a lot of pain in our cellular memory because most of the time we're so busy surviving, we don't actually have time to process all the things that our bodies have gone through. So we start going into our cellular memory pain and we start processing it. And it's scary and it can be really frightening. Um, and we go into this space. The facilitator will help a person get into this space of this is old stuff. Can we sit with it? Can we process it? In a belief that when we sit with things, similar to in breath work, when we allow our breath and when we allow things to come through our body and we stop getting in our heads and we actually just sit with it, they will dissolve. They always do. It's not necessarily done in one journey. It's not necessarily done in 2 or 3, but it allows things to start coming up, to be processed, and to dissolve. And that is a major release. And everyone has a unique journey to get there, to get to that piece of surrender frequency of, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to be in life because I'm human. And at any given point, I could die. People around me can die. Terrible things happen, and they do happen. And can I be okay with that? Can I sit with that? Can I drop in and believe? And then that's where we get to the spiritual, which is a whole nother topic of, can I believe that God is going to help me? Can I believe that there is a higher purpose in life? Can I believe that I am here for a reason and I chose to come down into this life? It can start getting very esoteric and very spiritual and very very higher self. And that's really what it boils down to. It's the same idea of higher self, wise mind, going into somatics, going to breath work, going into psychedelics, of this piece of, I am not fragmented. I am not these shattered little parts that I'm not a glass bottle that was dropped on the floor and shattered. Actually, I am so much more than that. I am all those parts, and I am the glass bottle, and I am actually the soda inside the bottle.
And the one
Okay, we could
drinking
take
the soda.
and the one drinking the soda. So we can take all these parts and we can start to understand that essentially we are so much bigger than that and so much greater than that. And we don't need to get caught up in all the little parts, and we can trust and we can believe. And when we start stepping into the surrender process and just trusting and believing, beautiful, incredible, amazing things happen with our lives. Things come up, they dissolve. The resistances are less, the triggers are less, and then we can just go on and live our lives in the ways that we want to with all the things that come our way, but we can actually hold it. We don't get stuck. We get stuck for a short time, and then we move, and then we rest, and then we move, and then we get stuck again, and then we go through that whole process again. So that would be my nerded out explanation.
And that was not even as nerdy as you could have gone. That was very clear, very grounded. I think it made sense to everybody listening because it just makes sense. And I think when you described some of these states, we all know that. Like even as you were describing the sympathetic state, I was feeling all of this back pain, and I struggle with that sometimes, but I don't always notice it. You know, I have this like residual pain, and then as you were talking, it was making itself very apparent to me. And what's also really funny is that as you were talking about the sympathetic nervous system, you know, I have sticky notes all over my desk, and there's just one sticky note that just stood out to me as we were talking, and it says, "What do I need to do to protect myself?" I was thinking notes on something. I was like, that there's like a million other sticky notes here, and that's the one that was at the top of the pile. And I was like, huh, that's so funny. We all, as you were describing that, I think we all know what it means to be in a sympathetic state. And while we may not be as familiar with a parasympathetic state, we've caught glimpses. And what you've really been describing this whole time, from the beginning of our talk, was this desire, this searching for, what if I can come to that place, right? Watch all of those little parts. It doesn't mean getting rid of them. It doesn't mean sending the inner child out of the room. Playful, it's being curious, it's being present. And what would it mean to actually live life from this place? Living life from this place does not mean that this doesn't exist. It doesn't mean we don't have those belly button days, but it means we know that we are not this. We are this that also interacts with that. And you make LSD sound fascinating. And I know that this is it's very much affected by the fantastic mentorship that you have, the willingness for yourself to put yourself through so much in terms of your own internal experience, And the years worth of work, like I was even reflecting that the fact that you're an OT and you went to college and learned about developmental stages and how they are in the brain and how they are in the body. And now you're coming at it from a new perspective, but you actually have all of that wisdom that you went to college for all those years ago and didn't know that that was going to be something that you're really going to be using in a very pragmatic and kind of, dare I say, licensed way. You know, a lot of people today who are serving psychedelics, they don't have the educational background that you have from a truly embodied place, like an OT embodied place, not just academic place. So as you were talking, I was really, really appreciating that about the knowledge that you shared and the way in which you practice, because it aligns very strongly with the value system I have around this. So I have one more question for you.
Yay.
Yes. Really, I don't. I have like notes. I'm like, we could just talk forever. I know that I think that's one of the tragedies of the friendships I have with people, that none of them live close enough to me to have like coffee dates with. Some of them do, but like the people that I love in this world, very often we have to drive out 2 hours to see one another. So I could talk to you forever. That's my belly button moment. But we kind of touched on this briefly, and this is kind of where I want to wrap with is bringing it back to vessel, but not really vessel, your work as well. This kind of work. If you had to sell vessel, or you had to sell your work to people out there, who are the people that should be doing this? And the thing that I told all the other interviewees that I had is, don't say everyone. There's this tendency to be like, everybody should be doing work on themselves, but kind of, who is the niche? Who do you think benefits most from the way you do the work in the world, the way I do the work in the world? Who is that person?
Such a good question, because I don't think it's everyone. I really don't think it is. I think I would say it's people who want more and are ready to do the work, because a lot of people want more, but they don't necessarily want to work so hard. So I would say that it's people who are here, they show up, they're committed. It's that moment of hineni, I'm here, I want to get the work done. And it's not just a desire, it's a commitment. It's a commitment that I can do hard things. I'm willing to do hard things. And even when it becomes difficult, and difficult can just mean that it's actually a lot of work to listen to modules and to listen to Q&As and, you know what, to go on the vessel chat and to connect with people and to be relational. And it's that commitment of, I want to do this work, and also no perfection. Understanding that I will not be able to get it all done. It's just not possible. And I'm going to take what I want. I'm going to leave the rest. And I'm just going to show up with an open heart and a full heart of, I want to do this work. I want to be present. And I trust in myself, and I trust in the process. Those are the people that I would say would benefit from doing this work.
And I trust in my belly button hours, and I trust kids, and I trust in my 9-to-5 desk job. I trust that the life I'm already living is the life that I'm meant to live.
Yeah.
But there's...
Yes. And the desire for change, that I may hate my 9-to-5. And my kid, who's most similar to me, is actually incredibly annoying. And also I have the opportunity to sit with what is, to accept it for what it is. And I can also desire change. And I have that right to desire change. And that's where improvement really happens.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting something important. You can desire change without leapfrogging into it. You can hold what is, envision what's to come, and hold it so well and for so long that it becomes this natural outgrowth, this natural transition. It's not a bypass. It's not, we're just higher selves now because we take psychedelics. No, it's years and years of day to day to get to this point.
Yes, and I would add one piece is that acceptance requires a lot of grief. I think that I know for myself that I used to think that, okay, I'm just going to accept it. I'm going to accept it. Fine, fine, fine. I'll accept it. And I force myself into acceptance, which is not really acceptance, but true acceptance really is, I am going to grieve the fact that I never had something. And that is the difference between a victim and between somebody who accepts things, is that I'm going to go into grief, and I'm going to process all the emotions and all the things that come up for me. And then I'm going to accept that this is the situation, and whatever I can change, I will change. But we do need to bring in the grief aspect, because many times if we don't bring in the grief, people go into victim state of, this shouldn't be happening. I can't do it. There shouldn't be happening. Right. And they're not going from a space of openness and acceptance and grief of, I'm going to sit here and process whatever it is, as opposed to just railing against it.
Yeah. Thank you. You've actually taught me a lot about that. Rachel used to say that when we started being friends, my voice notes sounded like data dumps. Now I have depth. I have real emotion. But yes, thank you for that piece. And uh, where can people find you if they want to schedule some work with you or learn more about what it is that you do?
Sure. So they can email me at rachelmoses1@gmail.com. Rachel is Rachel. Moses is MOZ as in zebra, ES as in Sam, 1@gmail.com. And usually my admin will get the information and will forward it on to me. And I typically try to respond within the week. I try my best. And yeah, that's probably the best way to reach me as opposed to using a personal number or anything like that, because I might get lost in
Yeah.
the flow of the 9 million text messages that comes into every single one of us mothers.
Yeah, and I like also that when people reach out via email because it forces people to be articulate, to actually introduce themselves, tell you what they're looking for, tell you a little bit about why they're looking for that. So I think that's also a prerequisite to this process to come in clear. Uh, So yeah, I'll definitely be posting the link to that in the show notes. So thank you so much. There's no real way to end a conversation like this, uh, because this is what Vessel and this work really is, right? It's not just content. It's how we live that content, how the content lives through us. Um, Obviously, you can reach out to Rachel via her email if you want to find out more about Vessel. Super easy. You can just go to my site. It's fallyklein.com/vessel. You can join the waitlist there. We start soon. We'd love to have you. And Rachel, I just have one word to close our time together, and it is manomana.
Petit, petit, petit.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I want to give you a little something extra, a sneak peek into my favorite part of Vessel, our live Q&A calls. This is where the content comes alive in real time, shaped by the questions, stories, and the needs of the people in the room. It's raw, personal, and never the same twice. And it's where some of the most powerful shifts happen. Okay. Hey, Fally, I'm struggling with my role as a mother. I'm coming to realize I really don't enjoy most parts of it. I could try as hard as possible to fill my own cup, but all that does is create more resentment when I have to stop what I love doing when the kids come home. I know this sounds selfish, but I can't pretend to be this nurturing, loving person anymore. So I wish that I actually had you here because I have so many questions for you, right? What do you think being a mother means? Right. I think you're kind of alluding to it in the last piece of your question. It's like, I can't pretend to be this nurturing, loving person anymore. If you think that the definition of being a mother is nurturing and loving, or if someone told me that that was the definition of being a mother, I might also hate being a mother because I don't identify as a very nurturing and loving person, at least not in the, I guess, the perceived image of what nurture and love is supposed to look like, right? To me, nurture is a full-bodied person who gives amazing hugs and serves chicken soup and always has warm food in the oven and says I love you a lot. I'm just right. That's not who I am. I'm very practical, and the ways in which I show nurture and love is by being very organized and making sure that my kids' laundry is always done. I think we already established my love for laundry, or just making sure that to me, I'll just give you an example of how I showed love. I'm gonna give myself a mitzvah note right now. So the other day, it was like a week ago, I had a parenting moment. I don't know how many of you can identify. It was hard. I was in the car, I was driving, and my teenage daughter, I'm gonna cry when I say this because it's really hard. My teenage daughter was exclaiming over something on her phone. She was saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I need 66 more points to become a Rouge member at Sephora." And I'm like, that's fantastic. What is a Rouge member at Sephora? Like I shop in Sephora. I know that they have this thing about, points and you get promotions and you can get a free birthday gift. By the way, if anyone is listening to this call and does not yet know that, if you sign up with a Sephora account and you put in, your birthday, the month of your birthday, you can go in and get a free gift in Sephora, and their free gifts are pretty nice. If you have a teenager, what you're going to really want to do is give them 12 email addresses, and they should sign up for 12 accounts, and then they go in every month and get a freebie every single month. This is just parenting advice for all of you. So she's telling me that she has 66 more credits to become a Rouge member, and I say, how many? Well, how do you become a Rouge member? How much do you have to spend to become a Rouge member? And she gets very suspiciously quiet. And then I just look it up, and it's $1,000 in a calendar year. $1,000 in a calendar year. You can imagine what that did to me as a mother, to be like, this is where all of your babies. I did not give her $1,000 in a calendar year for Sephora. Turns out she had a very heady system for it. She has figured this out. If you have teenagers, you need to listen closely. It's not all her stuff, all my stuff. Everything that I order in Sephora apparently has been going to her account. So it's her stuff, it's my stuff, all her friends' stuff, the neighbor's stuff. She has amassed $1,000 worth of spending on her Sephora account in less than a calendar year. I cannot believe I'm devoting this much time to this. Yeah. Anyway, she was very, I had to get over my initial shock and disgust and horror at this. And then I remembered that when I was her age, I didn't spend $1,000 on makeup, but I spent a couple of $1,000s on CDs and music. We all have our things, that we nerd out over. About 2 days ago, we got a Sephora package, and they ended up sending us the wrong sample items that we wanted, that we put in our package. So I don't care. I don't care. My daughter cared enough to call them up, and she texted me and she says, I'm so excited because I called them up and they made it good. They sent me 50 Sephora points. And I texted her back and I said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. $15 to go before you become a Rouge member. And she sent back, I can't believe you remembered. That was my moment of love. That was my moment of nurture as a mother. That was it. That was it. It wasn't me saying I love you. It wasn't me giving her chicken soup. It wasn't me having hot kugel and cookies on the counter when she came home from school. It wasn't that. It was me remembering. The only reason I remembered is not because I love her. It's not because I care. It was because it was so traumatic to me to hear that my daughter spent $1,000 in a calendar year on makeup, right? It just was burned into my brain. But I used that trauma and I turned it into a moment of love and connection. Why do you think, going back to your question, I think we have this misconception about what it means to be a good mother. And you put it there, nurturing and loving. I don't think that everybody is cut out to be this incredible nurturer or this incredible, loving person. I think we all have different ways of showing up. Who taught you that this is what motherhood has to be? I want to tell you something. Having teenagers has been such a gift because in a certain way, it alleviated something for me. I did feel that when my kids were younger, there was a much more of the mommying role of the sitting on the floor with them, bending over the bathtub, the comforting them when they were not sleeping at night or when they were throwing up. And I think the gift for me of when they were younger is that they go to bed early. Because I maybe don't identify, or I didn't identify as the warm, nurturing, loving mother. So I was able to do it in small doses. And then they went to bed at 7 p.m. And then from 7 to 7, 12 hours, I was allowed to be this very snarky, sarcastic, adult that I really like to be. Now that they're teenagers, something has lightened for me. I don't have to be that anymore. I get to be this. I get to be sarcastic and funny and silly. And there's a friendship that I'm able to develop with my teenagers that maybe wasn't available to me when they were much younger. And I needed to be nurturing mommy who holds their heads and hair back while they're throwing up. Right. And there's going to be some of that with you for always. But I think you have to redefine yourself what good mothering is. And it doesn't have to be this pigeonhole that you think it is. And also mothering is tiring. I have to say, a family member of mine is expecting their first, and they're talking about it, they're excited, they're just, and I just told them, the first 20 years are the hardest, because it is. No one tells you when you have your first kid and when you're pregnant, the first 20 years are the hardest. It doesn't stop. It really doesn't stop. And you never stop worrying about your kids. You never stop thinking about them. When they get married and when they're successful adults, you still worry about them. You still daven for them. I mean, my mother, we're all married. And she still says the kapitel of Tehillim according to our ages. There are a lot of us, there are 9 of us. My mother says 9 kapitel a day for each one of her children, in addition to the nishmas that she says for the kid who's going through something, and the davening, and we never stop. We never stop. But also, why do you think that mothering needs to be this tiny little version of something that you aren't or don't want to be? Be you. Be you and trust that that is exactly the right mother for your kids. And even as you are exactly the right mother for your kids, there's going to be a kid who hates you. There's going to be a kid who's angry with you. There's going to be a kid who will swear to their therapist that you ruined their life. It's okay. It stinks, but it's just how kids work. Okay? You're a good mother, and take care of yourself more. And it's not just filling up your own cup. Self-care is not just go out with your friends, go on vacation. Could you actually fill up your own cup internally? Like, what stories are you telling yourself about motherhood? What stories are you like? Your own cup is not just from the outside in, sometimes it's from the inside in. So I would encourage you to reframe that narrative. I actually am very lucky. I come from a lineage of women who work, corporate women, smart women who run companies. And so for me, and are also on the PTA and cook dinner and, right? So I think my definition of motherhood growing up, what I viewed as motherhood was someone who can really have it all. My issue with motherhood was learning that having it all doesn't mean necessarily having to do it all. Stop trying so hard to be superwoman. But I got very lucky in that regard because I realized there was no one right way to be a mother. You can be an amazing mother and also have a career. You can be an amazing mother and also be an artist. You can be an amazing mother and still not be the kind of person. I don't own board games. I don't. I will play magnet tiles on the floor with a kid. Do not ask me to play Monopoly. I don't want to play Monopoly. And sometimes I feel guilty about it because, families have game nights. I don't know why. I just cannot do board games. I cannot. Stratego, don't care. Don't care. I don't do board games. Does that make me a bad mother? No, it just makes me a mother who doesn't do board games. There are many other ways that me and my kids have fun. So many times on a Shabbos afternoon, a kid has brought me like a game. Can you play with me? And I'll be like, nope. That game exists for you to play with your siblings and your friends. I don't do board games. There are many other things to do with you, but I won't be playing a board game. It's a boundary that I just set. If you want to have a great mother, don't ask that great mother to get on the floor and play a board game. If that's what sends them into therapy, I live. I will live. Yeah. And also remember, the first 20 years are the hardest, and they do pass eventually.